Hey everyone, we're about to dive into some of the most unbelievable, most mind-blowing true stories of survival you've ever heard. Seriously, these are tales that stretch the very definition of what it means to be human. So let's get right into it. But first, I want you to just think about this for a second. What are the absolute limits of our endurance? I mean, when everything, and I mean everything, is gone. No food, no hope, no civilization. What is left inside of a person? Well, today we're going to explore 3 people who found out the hard way. They were pushed way, way beyond those limits. They stared the impossible right in the face, and somehow they clawed their way back. Okay, so our first story takes us to the middle of the vast, unforgiving Atlantic Ocean during World War II. And at the center of it all is a man named Pun Lim. Picture this. It's November of 1942. Pun Lim is a steward on a British merchant ship, just doing his job. And then out of nowhere, bam, 2 torpedoes from a German U-boat rip the ship apart. It goes down fast. Lim is thrown into the ocean, and when he finally breaks the surface, gasping for air, there's nothing, just wreckage. He is completely, totally alone, the sole survivor. He eventually finds a small wooden life raft, which is a miracle in itself. But what he does on that raft is just... it's beyond belief. He survives for 133 days. Alone. Just let that number sink in. That's over 4 months adrift in the open ocean. So, when the few rations he had ran out, his brain just kicked into high gear. This is where it gets incredible. He takes a spring from a flashlight and bends it into a fishhook. He braids rope into a fishing line. He even rigs up a canvas to catch every single precious drop of rainwater. He's catching seagulls, for crying out loud, and drying their meat in the sun to make jerky. This guy wasn't just sitting there waiting for rescue. No way. He was actively fighting, engineering his own survival, minute by minute. But, the physical stuff, that was only half the battle. The mental game he had to play, that was just as brutal. I mean, can you even imagine the feeling of seeing salvation right there on the horizon, only to have it snatched away from you? Because for him, it happened again and again. The German U-boat that sank his ship actually surfaced, saw him on his little raft, and the crew just mocked him and sailed away, left him to die. Sometime later, a cargo ship passes by, close enough to see him, and it just keeps going. And then the ultimate heartbreak. An American plane spots him. They drop a marker for a rescue boat, but before they can get there, a massive storm hits and blows him completely off course. Just one crushing blow after another. He was at the absolute end of his rope. No water, delirious from the sun, sharks literally circling his raft. And this is where he does something that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. He catches a shark. A shark. He somehow wrestles it onto his tiny raft and drinks the blood from its liver just to get some fluid into his body. I mean, that is the will to live in its most raw, most primal form. He was eventually found by some Brazilian fishermen, finally rescued after 133 days. Just incredible. Okay, let's switch gears. From the endless blue of the ocean, we're heading to the brutal, unforgiving wilderness of the American frontier. And we're going to meet a man named Hugh Glass. The year is 1823. Glass is a fur trapper, deep in what would become South Dakota. And he makes a terrible mistake. He gets between a grizzly bear and her cubs. She absolutely destroys him. We're talking a broken leg, his back shredded open, his throat slashed. He is just a mess. His crew, they see this and they're sure he's a goner. So they leave 2 guys behind, John Fitzgerald and a much younger Jim Bridger, with one job. Wait for him to die and then give him a proper burial. So 5 days go by, and Glass is, somehow, still breathing. Fitzgerald and Bridger get spooked. Fearing an attack by a local tribe, they do the unthinkable. They grab his rifle, his knife, everything he has, and they leave him in a shallow grave to die alone. But here's the thing. Hugh Glass refused to die. Instead, he started to crawl. For 6 weeks, he dragged his mangled body over 200 miles of wilderness. He survived by eating roots and bugs. He even let maggots clean his wounds to stop gangrene. Unbelievable. So what on earth could possibly fuel a man to go through that kind of hell? It's one word: revenge. He had this white-hot, burning obsession to find the men who betrayed him. See, he wasn't just surviving. He was hunting. That single thought, confronting them, was the only thing keeping him alive. And incredibly, he does find them. He tracks down young Jim Bridger first, but he sees the kid's regret, his youth, and he finds it in his heart to forgive him. Fitzgerald, though, that was a totally different story. By the time Glass finds him, Fitzgerald had joined the U.S. Army. The Army captain basically says, nope, you can't touch him, he's government property now. So Glass gets his rifle back, but Fitzgerald, the guy who started the whole thing, he got away with it. So we've seen incredible individual will. Surviving on your own through sheer grit, that's one thing. But what happens when the stakes are even higher? What do you do when you're not just trying to save yourself? How do you lead 27 other men back from a frozen hell when they're all looking to you for answers? Well, that brings us to our final story. This is the story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his legendary Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. And this isn't just a tale of survival. It is one of the greatest stories of leadership of all time. So, Shackleton's goal was epic. Be the first to cross the entire continent of Antarctica on foot. But the plan went south, literally almost from the get-go. First, their ship, the Endurance, gets trapped in the pack ice. They're stuck there for 8 agonizing months. Then, the ice starts to squeeze. The pressure builds and builds until it finally crushes their ship to pieces, forcing them to abandon it and set up camp on a floating sheet of ice. And then, that ice camp starts to melt. So after this unbelievable ordeal, they manage to get into these small lifeboats and reach a barren rock called Elephant Island. It's better than melting ice, but they know nobody is ever going to find them there. So Shackleton makes a decision that is just insane. He decides he and 5 of his best men will take one tiny 22-foot lifeboat and try to sail 800 miles across the roughest seas on Earth to get to a whaling station. It was a complete Hail Mary. And that journey was a total nightmare. For 2 weeks, they battled these huge 20-foot waves and freezing temperatures. And when they finally make it to South Georgia Island, they've landed on the wrong side, of course. So Shackleton and 2 of his men, completely exhausted with no real climbing gear, had to then trek over these unexplored glacial mountains for 36 hours straight just to reach the whaling station on the other side. And he made it. He walks into this whaling station a complete wreck of a man. But he doesn't rest. He immediately starts planning the rescue for the men he left behind. It took 4 long months and multiple failed attempts, but he never gave up. And when he finally broke through the ice and got back to Elephant Island, every single one of his 27 men was still alive. He didn't lose a single soul. He brought them all home. So there you have it. 3 unbelievable stories. What's the takeaway here? What's the thread that connects them all? What exactly is this will to live? Well, it seems like we saw 3 different versions of the same incredible force. With Pun Lim, it was pure ingenuity, right? His mind just refused to surrender. For Hugh Glass, it was all about willpower. His heart was fueled by revenge and simply refused to be broken. And with Shackleton, it was leadership. His spirit absolutely refused to abandon his men. In the end, these stories are more than just amazing adventures. They're kind of like a mirror, you know? They show us what we're capable of when everything else is stripped away, and all that's left is a single core purpose. And they really make you ask yourself, what are you living for? What's the thing you would crawl 200 miles for? Who are the people you would cross 800 miles of a frozen ocean to save? It's definitely something to think about.